All right, welcome to How to Create a Podcast, Day 3. Welcome to Thriving Launch with Louise Congdon and Kamala Chambers, the show for heart-centered entrepreneurs who want it all.
5 days a week, we bring you different segments to inspire you to live a life of freedom. We interview the leading experts in the field of business, health, and love. Be sure to check out Training Tuesdays, where we give you a clear action plan to grow your own business.
How would you like to be able to interview world-class experts? Sit down and have chats with people like Jack Canfield, Marianne Williamson, Robert Kiyosaki, Tim Ferriss, you name it. Would you love to interview other people that you really admire and consider to be your heroes? Well, we've created a course for you that teaches you how to podcast, how to set it all up, and how to get going so that you can really have a successful show and you can do it properly. Over at thrivinglaunch.com, we have a podcasting course, and it's there for you, waiting for you to snatch it up. So head on over to thrivinglaunch.com and let me teach you how to podcast the right way. Today, I really want to go and slow down, back up, and keep focusing on the fundamentals. Because I know that a lot of people, they want to jump ahead to recording, to creating the show. But, without really understanding the fundamentals, I'm afraid we'll get ahead of ourselves, and next thing you know, you're recording a show, you're sending it to iTunes, you've spent some money, you've spent some time really developing and recording, but you haven't developed the wherewithal to create a show that really helps you and does what you want it to. So if you remember on day 1, I talked about really understanding who you're creating this show for, have an idea of who the ideal listener is for, and have an idea of what the end goal of your show is. So you're not just creating a show because it sounds cool, but you're creating a show because you understand where you want it to take you. So for example, if you're a coach and you're trying to appeal to people in the weight loss industry, then you want to create the kind of show that appeals to people, that will help you attract the kinds of people who could become your clients, who could become good allies for you in your business, who could be a support system for the growth of your business and your coaching. Very similarly, if you're in some other kind of industry, you really want to consider, what is your show going to do, and how can you create a show that will help you do exactly what it is that you want it to? Because there's a lot of people that are creating shows that are completely unrelated to their business, completely unrelated to what they want the show to actually do. So, I want to give you an example of a company that I had the opportunity to consult for and work with, and they're a clothing business. And when we were talking, one of the things that we noticed is that they really wanted to get more vendors. They wanted to get more people who could sell their products. So this is in another country, and this clothing company is structured very much like an MLM. And MLMs are, if you make a sale, then you get paid a percentage. And if you get other people to make sales for you, then you get a percentage of some of those sales. And one of the things that we noticed is that what they were doing with their outreach, with pretty much everything that they were doing as far as online and the podcast industry goes, what they were doing was they were creating content that made them appeal to people not in a way that was related to the kinds of people that would want to become salespeople. So they were posting pictures of their clothing, but when you went to their website, you couldn't buy the clothing off their website. And when you went to the website, there's no way for you to find out how to become a vendor and how to sell the clothing. But really, that's what they wanted more of, is they wanted more vendors. So one of the things that we talked to them is, why don't you start creating a podcast that tells stories about your vendors, about people who are selling your products and how it's changed their lives. Maybe feature some people who have come in through your doors and become a vendor, and talk about how it's changed their lives and what's happened, and really focus on this opportunity, and do that through the podcast, do that through your website, do that through your social media. And when people land on the website, if they can't buy the clothes on your website and you're not trying to sell clothing through the website, then shouldn't your website highlight the opportunity that they could get from becoming a vendor. Very similarly, if you're in some other kind of industry, this is something to consider. Now, you don't have to be so literal with this. I was recently reading an article about the company Slack. Slack is kind of like an online community where you can kind of create a group of people where they can chat with each other, and it can help you organize work projects or just community conversations between a certain group of people that you can add in to this basically like an online forum. And Slack created a show that was about community. So it wasn't about Slack, the product. It was a show more around community and stories and storytelling. But through their show, at the very beginning, they would talk about the product Slack.com and how at Slack people could create communities and use their online forum to really empower people to have community discussions and be more involved in community. And then the show would start. And so you can do something like that too, right? Because through that show, they're highlighting something that is relevant to their product, but they're not being so literal where they're trying to just sell you their product. Ideally, your podcast has a level of entertainment to it. So, if you're like a car company, maybe you bring car aficionados onto your show and people talk about how they souped up their cars and what it was like to work on this car, or you have some kind of entertaining show where people can call in and talk about car problems. NPR has this really great show where people call these two guys, and these two guys are hilarious, and people call in these guys and talk to them about their car problems. Now, you see, it isn't directly branding the car company if you're a car company who has a podcast, but by providing a show for people who are fans of cars and love cars, you are branding yourself and attracting your customers through a show that engages the types of customers and clients that you want. So, you can get really creative. And when people talk to me, they ask me a lot of questions like, what's the ideal amount of time? Should I have guests, not have guests? How should I structure my podcast? What do I need to do? And one of the things I tell people is that unlike going to a traditional, like television show or radio show or magazine where they have, publication dates and they fit you in with slots, this is your show. So you can get really creative. That doesn't mean that you get so creative that you're kind of sporadic in how often you release an episode and you're not consistent. You can be creative, but there are a few guidelines. So let me give you a couple guidelines. One is you want to be consistent on when you release the show. So if you decide you're releasing an episode every Monday at 7 a.m., then make sure you release an episode every Monday at 7 a.m. If you decide you're releasing 2 episodes every week, then that's what you want to do. If you decide you want to do it by seasons, then you create seasons. And at the end of a season, you let people know when the new season starts up so that then people can have this sense of accountability, because people are routine based. We're creatures of habit, right? So don't feel too constrained in regards how you have to do this, but make sure that what you decide to do, whatever it is that you decide to do, you're consistent. Now, statistically speaking, on average, people listen to podcasts for about 20 minutes. So a good amount of time for a podcast episode is 20 minutes. You can go longer if you'd like and create awesome content. But, if you can go around 15 or 20 minutes, that's fantastic. If you're somebody who's hosting the show by yourself and you're doing kind of like I am right now, where you're teaching a lot and it's just you talking, you might decide that you do 5-7 minute episodes once a week, or 5-7 minute episodes twice a week. But whatever it is that you decide to do, choose to be consistent. Be consistent with that. Now, if you decide that you're going to be doing 20-minute episodes, but one week you do a 12-minute episode, don't worry about that, right? People aren't going to get too upset about that. But people will get confused if the episodes are supposed to come out every Monday, and then all of a sudden you drop off for 2 or 3 months. Your listeners will disappear, and there's a high likelihood not many of them will return because they're going to go find another show. So make sure that you stay consistent. And if for some reason you're not going to be consistent with something, or the show's going to drop off for a while, let your audience know. Now, here's another tip for you. And we're going to talk about the recording, but right now, we're going to get into how to record and all that other complex stuff that is fairly simple, but it sounds complex, excuse me. But the point here is when we get into the how-tos and the nitty-gritty of podcasting, when we get to that, because you've listened to these episodes on the fundamentals, then you'll be far ahead of the game and you won't make some of the mistakes that I've made. So one of the things that I want you to do is when we get into the recording piece, I want you to consider and realize that I'm going to want you to record 5, 10, 15 episodes in advance before you ever release your show to the public. By having a lot of shows in the bucket, ready to go, already done and ready for release. Now, if you decide you're going to do a show every Monday, for example, and you've already done 15 episodes, that's 15 weeks. So if you want to take a vacation with the kids, or you want to take a vacation with friends, or you've got work, so you want to put the show off for a little bit, you've bought yourself some time, and then you can schedule and automate all the episodes to go out so you can do other things, but the show's still going out and your audience is still being engaged and they're having content to engage you with. And I'll teach you more about that. But right now, I just wanted to open up your mind to the possibility that this show is your show and you can do it how you like to. Now, one suggestion I have is if you want to position yourself as like an expert because you're a coach or a therapist or somebody who helps other people accomplish something, my suggestion is if you decide to do an interview-based show where you interview other people, you bring on a guest, you interview them, but you also maybe do one episode once a week along with your interview. Once a week, you do an episode that is very short. It can be really short, where it's just you talking about some concept so that you can demonstrate your expertise. Or if you don't want to do that, when you talk to your guest, talk to them as if you're also an expert. So if your guest tells you some really valuable advice or information, tell them, that's fantastic information. And that's very similar to what I teach my clients. Or, when I heard you say that, it made me think about some of the things that I've taught my clients and the results they've gotten. And one of the things that we teach them is X, Y, and Z. And it really resonated with me when I heard that. And now I'd like to ask you a follow-up question, but demonstrate your value. Just know that your show is your show and you are the expert and you are the creative genius behind it. This is one of the key fundamental pieces that a lot of my coaching clients forget about, is that this is their show and they can create it how they want. And that also by hosting a show, you can also demonstrate how you're an expert or somebody who's gotten results for other people. And even when you're interviewing other people and other experts, you are also an expert with that person. You are also someone who has value to add to the audience, and feel free to add that value. You can do it through your questions, but you can also do it by bringing up things that you know and engaging your guest by sharing some information that you know as well. So this piece that we've talked about today is really important for me about, one, being really creative, that you are the creative author of your show, that you can demonstrate value, and that you can decide a release schedule for your show that really suits you, right? You're not beholden to some sort of, we do 5 days a week on our podcast, but you don't have to do that. You could do 5 days a week. You could do 7 days a week. You can do 1 day a week. You could do every other week. You could do a couple episodes every quarter. It's really up to you. But one of the rules of thumb, just so that you have this in your head, is that most of the time, generally speaking, more content equals more fandom. So we do 5 days a week. One reason is because we want to give people from Monday through Friday content so that as they're driving to work, they can listen to something, they can be engaged during the work week. And then Saturday and Sunday, we don't release any episodes. But some other shows are 7 days a week. But one of the things that I wanted to say here is that you don't have to do that. We do that because we want to provide content for people 5 days a week during the work week. We do it also because we know that the more content that you're sharing with the world, the more people you're attracting to you. It's a general rule of thumb. But if you already have a big audience or you already have a list, maybe you don't have to release content and information as often, right? But it's really up to you what feels good, and I advise you to test it out. There are shows that are only released like once a month that do fantastic. Generally, those are shows with a lot of production value and a lot goes into it. There are shows that are released once a week that have incredible value. There are ones that are twice a week, 3 times a week, 5 times a week, 7 days a week. So it's up to you what you want to do, and I want you to know that it's really up to you. But what I have found is that whatever you decide to do, be consistent with that. So with that being said, I want you to spend some time and consider what are some of the ways that I can create a show that would really engage my ideal clients, my ideal audience. What's the kind of show that I want to commit to? And then check in next week where we're going to talk about some more of the fundamentals to get you started so that you can start recording your episodes and start really getting going on this thing.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there.
Be sure to tune in to Training Tuesday on the next episode where we talk with Ashley Stahl about scaling a business that's growing fast. If you've enjoyed this episode, be sure to leave us a rating and subscribe on iTunes.